All right. This chapter is so much fun. It's all about enhancing relationships, and it can be any type of relationship that you have, okay? So, when we're talking about enhancing relationships, we're talking about friendships, we're talking about with your employers, with your significant others, or people you might want to be a significant other. It could be any one of them, all right? So, let's go to the next. First, let's talk about the importance of relationships. We already know that your friendships go through different stages. I mean, you have childhood friendships that are just basically kids you played with, okay? You know, you went out and you played, or your parents made a play date, or sometimes your best friends were your siblings if you happen to have some. You never know, but you have different childhood play friends, and then you have your adolescent play friends. You're still playing, but you're starting to look at the world a little bit more. You're starting to experience what the world should be like, and then there's adulthood. And those are completely different types of friends, aren't they? Now, some of these friends might be friends that you had from childhood or adolescence, but they're not always going to be the same. And, quite frankly, some friendships in adulthood, they would not have recognized you in childhood at all. Okay. And then we have the old age friendships, and we're not really going to get into those. But if you think about it, the way we raise our children is very interesting. When they're very young, we are their primary caregivers, and therefore we are teaching them how to navigate the world, how to navigate friendships, how to navigate conflict, how to learn to be a good person, how to win with class and not with, crassness. And as we get older in adolescence, we're starting to explore the world more. The parents are still there. We still teach our kids, but now they're exploring on their own. But they can always fall back to us to get advice on why this didn't work or why that relationship didn't work out, etc. And then adulthood, where we have to do it on our own. But I can tell you something. If you have a really good relationship with your primary caregiver, you will probably end up still calling them. I still call my mother. I'm 52. Okay, so old age. Now, friendship matters because, of course, it helps us navigate the world around us. And if we're having a tough time, these are the people that help us survive those times. But we have our own interests, our likes and our dislikes. We communicate more frequently as friendships develop. But then we have those friendships that we hardly ever communicate with at all, and yet we can pick up exactly where we left off 5 years ago. Nonverbal immediacy cues establish the friendships. When they talk about the nonverbal immediacy cues, those are the ones where and immediacy is you're leaning in to have the conversation. You're maintaining that eye contact a little bit more. You are open to this individual. Okay, we listen and respond appropriately, and we develop adaptation skills. Some people we already know we have to communicate a little bit differently than we can communicate with others. Okay, what does this say? Early messages as children remain in psyches. That's actually pretty cute, true. I guess I totally missed this slide when I was reviewing the information, but it's true. We learn lessons as children that we continue on into adults. I was having a conversation earlier with some students who were here giving speeches. And one of the things that I can tell you definitively is within 30 seconds to a minute in any parent teacher conference I've ever had, I can tell you exactly why I'm having the problem I'm having with this child because I'm seeing it in the parents. Okay, we teach them everything. And remember, kids learn more from what we do than what we say to do. So these early messages are ingrained. If you want to raise little ladies, little gentlemen, you have to be a lady or a gentleman. You have to do the right thing yourself because it remains in the psyche. And in healthy families, notice that's what it says here, healthy families, our verbal and our nonverbal messages, uh, we are actively listening, we're communicating directly, we're looking at each other, not through one another. Have you ever done that? Where somebody's talking to you and you're looking at them and you're nodding, but you're not really listening to a word they say. Guess what? They kind of know that. So, all right. Lack of listening or responding leads to conflict. It does. Remember, silence is still communication and it can say a lot. So if you choose not to listen, choose not to respond, how many times have you heard your parents or have you as a parent yelled at your kid, hey, hey, hey? I saw something recently, it cracked me up. The first time mom says, okay, 5 minutes and we're getting in the car, and she has the sweet Mary Poppins voice, and then here comes the Batman voice. Get in the car. And it's true. Okay, if we choose not to respond, that does make a difference and it can lead to conflict. And we do tend to adapt around our parents. I don't know many people who would communicate with their buddies, their friends, their pals the same way they would communicate with their parents. Some do, some don't. But for the most part, we tend to adapt our language, adapt our understanding. Our parents come from a different generation, and so we have to keep that in mind when we're communicating with them. Whether it be body art or, in my mother's words, one of those tattoos. I look at it as body art. It's going to have a different connotation for both of us. And so we would have to adapt that. And so that's a normal part of the relationship there. Now, colleagues at work matter because that whole awareness of surroundings at work, that's like before I started doing this video. The first thing I did was thought, okay, I don't want people to think that it's okay to just walk in right now. So I went and I closed the door and I put a note on the door. I have to be aware. You don't want to sit there and gossip about a colleague right behind them. You shouldn't gossip anyway, but we know that we're going to share information. We use our verbal and nonverbal communication skills to make positive impressions on others at work. At least that is our goal. We need to be patient. We need to be non-judgmental. And sometimes we really have to edit what we want to say. We have to be careful with our responses because we don't want them to be misconstrued, misunderstood, or we don't want to say the wrong thing. Just because it's in your head does not mean it has to come out your mouth, okay? The mouth is the gatekeeper. You shouldn't always let it go. And of course, we have to adapt to communicate differently with your boss versus your peers versus the people who work under you. I had an interesting experience many years ago. I worked at IBM. I spoke one way with my boss. I was always very subordinate to him. So I made sure I was yes, sir, no, sir. I used a lot of sirs and ma'ams and all that with that echelon of people up there. But I also had subordinates, and they called me ma'am. And I was in my 20s at the time, so it was kind of new to me, and it was uncomfortable. I wasn't used to being called ma'am, and I wasn't used to being deferred to. But in that area, I did have more knowledge, and I was a higher level in the workplace. So I was right in the middle, and I had to adapt constantly depending on who I was communicating with. And then I'd go visit the programmers, and those people were nuts. So our relationships do develop in stages, and most of this, now there's in another textbook I use, I prefer his model of relationship development. It was called Knapp's model, but they don't really use that so much in this textbook, so that's what we're going to go with. But the stages do impact how we communicate with others. Okay, and our communication facilitates the movement between stages. You don't just jump from one stage to the next. It's a never ending, always changing ebb and flow of a relationship. Now, this image here, this is where I go a little bit differently than the other textbook, and so I'm going to draw something. You'll notice that they have it very plainly. You go up the scale, you go down the scale. But if you think about it, more like a pyramid, okay? And you have the different stages of the pyramid. And something to keep in mind, the different stages of the pyramid. If you wanted to use that kind of note for this, it would be very effective, because you need to realize that these stages up here are kind of stage regulation, relationship management, if you will. This is the building of the relationship, this is the de-escalation of the relationship, but this set up here is going to be in the management stages. Now, if we were to look at your PowerPoint, that would be from the intimacy intensification to de-intensification and turmoil or stagnation. Okay, those areas would be in that management section, because you can't just jump from one to the next. You can't just, jump from 1 to 3 stages away. And, well, you shouldn't, not in a healthy relationship. And you have to realize, though, that you're not always going to be in the same stage. I could be sitting here in an intensification stage while my close friend, best friend, spouse, significant other is over here in the turmoil or stagnation stage. We could be viewing it differently. And you need to recognize that this can happen. You're not always going to feel like you're in the same stage. But let's talk about these stages and see how they work in a relationship. Now, relational escalation, that's that upper, you're going up the pyramid, you're going up the side of the pyramid, and recognize that you have to start at the bottom to build on it. So that pre-interaction awareness, that's that first look. Remember, you can't take back a first impression. You can change it later, but you can't take it back right then. But that's that first look. That's where your type comes into play. What type do you have? And you have a tendency to focus on that type immediately. And you're observing that person, but you're not necessarily interacting at this point. You're thinking, I think I want to interact. That may be not the words you use, okay? But you get the point. The initiation stage is that first contact. It's usually asking and answering questions. It could be that first date, or it could be pre-first date. It could be just getting to know each other in a restaurant or in a gym or something and saying, hey, so what's your name? Don't say what's your sign. Please don't say what's your sign. Anyway, oh gosh, and that's where all those bad lines come in. Oh, did it hurt? Did what hurt? When you fell from heaven? Okay, don't use stuff like that. Please don't. But that's the initiation stage. Then you have the exploration stage, okay? More in-depth interactions. You're going places, possibly dating for a little bit. Or if it's just a good friend, you're going out and you're hanging out. You're going to get dinner, you're going shopping, whatever it is you're doing, going to movies. But you're exploring the idea of a relationship of some kind, whether it's a friendship or more. But you're exploring, you're discovering your compatibility as a set. Then you have the intensification stage. You start to depend on each other for self-confirmation. Do I look okay in this? Do you really think that we could do this? Or am I worthy? We always have that feeling of worthiness. Do they value us as a human being? We have more shared activities, more time together, more intimate physical distance. You start sitting right next to each other, the arm around the hand, you know, the shoulder, the holding hands, the little kisses in public maybe. I don't know how you feel about PDA. It depends on you. And for those of you who don't know what PDA means, it means public display of affection. You have those kind of things going on. You still, if you're looking at a significant other potential relationship, you still have not dropped off into the bed, okay? Please don't do that immediately. It should never be a first date thing, ever. Shouldn't even really be a third date thing, okay? It should wait a while. That should wait a while because it can put stress on a relationship. And then you get to the intimacy stage. You provide primary confirmation of each other's self-concept. We are a set. This is up. There is highly personalized, synchronized, verbal, nonverbal communication. Now, this stage can last a long time. Have you ever heard that phrase, honeymoon period? Honeymoons last a long time, okay? They can last upwards of a year. I know a couple that got together and married, and 3 years later, you'd think they're still in their honeymoon period, okay? It can last a while. It depends on the people, of course. Some people, it could last a week. It depends. But you've got the definite, you're accepting invitations as a couple. You are a known couple. You are a known set. Now, if you're talking about best friends, this is where you've talked about everything, and they know where the bodies are buried. You can't get rid of that friend now because they could just turn you in. Now, here's the thing. That was right here if you're looking at the pyramid, okay? The intensification stage. Intensification stage. The turmoil or stagnation stage is right here. Notice it can still go up and down. That means it can move around quite a bit. It's not always going to be stuck in that one stage. Turmoil, you're starting to have conflict. You know, you're not always going to be perfectly in tune with your partner. You're just not. Less mutual acceptance, okay? Just because you like it doesn't mean I have to like it. My ex loved trance music. It's not my thing, okay? So he would go to trance concerts, and I would stay home and read a book. I was quite happy. Or I might go out with my friends. A tense communication climate can occur here where you just feel like you stagnation. You're in a rut. You're doing the same thing all the time. You're starting to have doubts. You're having a little bit more independence at this point. You're feeling that you are unclear about where this relationship is heading, or that the relationship has lost its vitality. And then there's the de-intensification stage. Okay, so we've talked about these. Now we're here. De-intensification stage. Significantly decreased interaction. You barely talk anymore. You're not as close as you used to be. You don't depend on each other for self-confirmation. You're doing your own thing. You happen to, maybe if you're in a couple, then you might just be roommates at this point. Now, does that mean that you have to go to the next stage? Does that mean you have to go further? No. Somebody could say, you know what, we need to fix this and act on it, and you can jump from de-intensification back to intensification. You know, maybe somebody says, you know what, we need to work on this, let's go on a second honeymoon, or let's renew our vows, or something like that. Something can happen. Doesn't mean you're stuck going this route. It's definitely movable. You can be all over the place in this set. Individualization stage. You want to be yourself again. You don't want to be part of this known couple situation. You start to see yourself as a separate entity from the relationship. Separation stage. You and your partner have come to the conclusion that this is not working out. Or one of you has decided the other person may not be aware yet. Remember, you can be in different places on this chart. And but when it comes to the separation stage, notice I say it usually includes specific termination language. It usually includes, I won't call it a script, but we know somebody says, we need to work on this. I don't think we should be doing this anymore. I think I want a divorce, whatever it may be. It usually includes specific language. Now, the post-interaction or post-dissolution stage is after the relationship is over, okay? So if you're looking at this pyramid thing, this ugly drawing that I drew, and you have this bottom section here, right? This is the pre-interaction stage, and this is the post-interaction stage. Sometimes you are still going to end up in some type of relationship with the other partner. If you were parents, you're going to have children, and you're going to be children forever. And let's not forget, these children know that they're half of one parent, half of the other parent. Therefore, if you put down the other parent, you're putting down half of that child. Don't do it to that child. Don't do it. The children should not feel the stress of the parents. But these are the lasting effects of the relationship on the self. Quite frankly, after a divorce, you should not get back on the wagon, if you will, and jump right into new relationships. You need to take time for yourself, but some people do. You have effects, or in your next relationship, if in the previous relationship it didn't go well, maybe one of the significant others maybe cheated, or embezzled money, or it could be anything, maybe did drugs or whatever. When you move forward, you're carrying that with you. You're carrying the fear of that and how it affected your relationship with you. Now, is this a bad thing? It's not a great thing, but it's an understandable thing, and it's a known thing. And so if you get into the next relationship, this next partner needs to know that this is part of your past. They need to understand this because it will affect your behavior and your beliefs during that relationship. Maybe not in a bad way, but you need to be aware of it. Awareness is key. After the dissolution of the relationship, the breakup, okay, here's some, I love this, the best practices in breaking up. Don't be a ghost. I can tell you, it happened to me. It's weird. It's not good. It's not fair. In that let's go back and look, post-interaction stage, you walk around thinking, was it me? Was it them? It leaves so many doubts. There is no resolution, and you don't feel like you've had a good conclusion. It leaves you, the other person, lost. Give the other person a chance to respond, even if it's just, okay, just put the words out there so that they have a chance to respond. You never know, they might be responding not realizing where you felt you were on that relationship stage chart. They might say, what? You're not happy? What? What can I do to fix this? And it might put you back into the relationship in a more fulfilling way. Give them a chance to respond. Do it face to face. Breaking up by text is, well, at least you're not ghosting them, but it's really not the better way to go here. It's just not, because it shows a true, I don't want to use the word cowardice, because some people, I mean, honestly, if I were in an abusive relationship and I was being abused, yeah, I probably might use a text or the ghosting method, which is a horrible thing to do, but you have to do what you have to do to help and save yourself. But if you're not, Give them a chance. Do it face to face. Do it face to face. Don't do it by text. Don't even do it by phone. Video chat, I guess distance can play a role. Avoid the trite, let's still be friends line. So many people use it, and it's never, ever true. Don't say it's not you, it's me, because you know what? That's bull. And everybody knows it. It is you. It's my response to you. Nobody believes the it's not you, it's me thing unless you can back it up with evidence. If you can back it up with evidence, it might work. But don't say it and then don't back it up. You have to back it up. All right. And don't use the timing. It's just bad timing. It's just bad timing. If this were 10 years ago, or if this were in 5 years, but I have so much going on in my life right now. Don't do that. And, this is interesting. It's highly likely that you will have to break up with someone in your life. Well, yes, it is highly likely. It is highly likely. All right, after the breakup, the on again, off again, where you keep calling each other back and forth, trying to set up meetings and all that. You get together every now and then you're broken up again. Don't do all of that. The post-dissolutional relationship should be a clean break. It's harder, but it's more effective. And, if you keep getting together and breaking up and getting together and breaking up, then what happens is somebody is carrying out hope. And if you know that that hope should not exist, then don't keep doing that. It's cruel. It's just cruel. Now, some people end up still kind of in a relationship, not a significant other relationship, but a friendship. If you happen to have the same group of friends and you broke up, but you both still have the same group of friends, you're going to probably run into each other again. And you have to be aware that that could happen. So, but also remember this. You may be broken up. You may have decided not to make this relationship and take it any further than it has. But at one point, you chose that person. So there is no reason to hate them. Just because you break up doesn't mean you have to hate the other individual. It just means that y'all weren't good as a couple. So hate is not a necessary component to breaking up. Dialectics. This is how we first come about with conflict, basically. It's the relationship tensions. It's, how, as it says, relationships are dynamic and constantly evolving. We're going, all over the place, depending on how we manage the tensions in the relationship. What do you want to do for Christmas? Whose family should we visit? Or should we go visit both families? Or how are we going to do this? All of these are tensions. What do you want to do this weekend? I feel like we're doing the same thing every single week. All of these things are dialectics. And we call them push-pull dynamics because they really do push and pull you emotionally within a relationship that's constantly evolving and changing. So let's look at some of those dialectics. These are the three primary ones that are listed in your text. There's the integration versus separation, okay? That means their explanation is autonomy versus connection. Are you an independent human being, but you want to go together everywhere, together? Okay, you can't go out this weekend unless you go out together, or is it okay to have a girls' night or a guys' night? Autonomy versus connection. Do you have to do everything together, or can you do things separately on occasion? Stability and change. That's the predictability versus novelty. If you're doing the same thing every single day for a month, you might get a little tired of it, but some people might enjoy it. But then there are other people that need a little novelty every now and then. Let's get in the car and drive to San Antonio just because we can. Something a little bit different. Let's do something unique and different versus let's do the same thing we've been doing this whole time because we just get so much joy out of it. Which one are you? Expression versus privacy. That's also the openness versus closedness. This is one of the biggest issues in a relationship, right here. If you are talking to your significant other and they're playing on their phone and then they turn it over and set it on the table, other people might be saying, why'd they turn it over? Now, personally, I turn it over because it has a purse on it. I turn it over because otherwise it sits funny. Can your significant other look in your phone, read your texts, read your messages, listen to your voicemails, look at your phone log, look at your pictures? I personally don't have a problem with it. I have nothing on here that I have ever needed to hide from a significant other. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I did have an ex who it bothered him. And at the time, I don't think he was cheating. It was just he needed his private space. Can they look at your stuff? Can they not? Do you need to know every single thing going on with your partner all the time? Or do you give them independence and then let them tell you what they choose to tell you later? That is one of the tensions that a lot of people face in a relationship. When the novelty wears off in the relationship, sometimes we get bored with the predictability of a partner. How do you balance stability and change? How do you? Every couple is going to be different. Every couple is going to be different. Now, this is where we come with conflict, okay? Now, I put this definition on here just to remind you, but interpersonal conflict is, of course, that struggle when you cannot agree on a way to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. There's constructive conflict and there's destructive conflict. Constructive conflict requires cooperation. You have to deal with your differences and acknowledge that you have differences and then figure out how to make them work for you. Destructive is lack of cooperation in dealing with those differences, okay? One person has to win. And you know what? In a partnership, there shouldn't be anyone always winning, because that means it's a win-lose relationship and someone's always losing. The hallmarks of a constructive conflict: people can change. People can absolutely change. Here's the thing: you cannot make somebody else change. You can only change yourself. You can only change what's up here. You can't change what's up here in someone else. Don't go into a relationship expecting to fix them or to change them in any way. The only way somebody can change is if they choose to. People need to, in a constructive conflict, people need to interact with intent to learn. Help me figure out how to make this better. Okay? I don't know what I did wrong. Help me figure it out so I can make sure not to do that again. And don't stay stuck in it. Don't obsess. Don't sit there and cogitate on what happened. Okay? Move forward, away from it. Okay, that one changed. This one did not. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Constructive conflict can enhance your self-esteem because it's helping you grow as a person, and it's characterized by the focus on the relationship rather than, one person has to win. It's cooperative. Let's both win. Okay? Two people in the relationship both can win. And so you're working together so both of you can win. There are different types of conflict. Pseudo-conflict is when you just have a lack of understanding. It's one person is looking at something one way and one person is looking at something the other way. And so they're arguing, not realizing they're just looking at it differently. And so lack of understanding, it's pseudo-conflict. Simple conflict is when it's just a difference in ideas or definitions or even perceptions. Is this blue? Is this green? And I've seen arguments about, the full-fledged arguments about whether something is blue or green, or what the best, oh gosh, this is going to date me, the best Spice Girl song. I don't have an opinion. Anyway, and people can get into arguments about that, but that's simple conflict. It's really nothing that should affect a relationship. An ego conflict is when you feel like you've been hit in your gut. That's your personal issues. It's when you have an argument, say somebody says, oh, and I've heard this before, if you really loved me, you'd lose 10 pounds. Like it, and I felt like screaming back, if you really loved me, it wouldn't matter to you. When you hit me in my ego, when you hit me in my self-esteem, that's an ego conflict, and they are hard to rectify. Serial arguments are when you have the same argument again and again and again. If you realize that you're having the same argument today that you had yesterday, that you had 3 weeks ago, it's a serial argument. You're never going to find a solution. You're going to have to find a new solution, not just one person winning. Irresolvable or intractable conflict. One or both of you deem it impossible to resolve. Cannot be fixed. Cannot be resolved. I know some people that have intractable conflict because of political belief systems. Unfortunately, they're not treating each other with respect, and so it's becoming a relationship issue. Conflict involves power, interpersonal power. Who has more influence to change the other person? Who has more influence over the other person's belief system? Okay, so who can make the other one do what? And it may involve assertive communication or aggressive communication. Assertive means I'm taking your feelings into account. I want to get this done, but I recognize that you have a different feeling about this, and we're going to resolve this conflict in a proper manner. Aggressive is I'm going to cuss at you. I don't care what you're thinking. I'm going to tell you what to do, and if you don't do it, that's just it. Okay? And that's where the most arguments happen. I like this. I don't feel like arguing this argument again, Tom. Standing in for me tonight will be Sarah, my understudy. Have you ever felt like you needed an argument understudy? That's for a serial conflict. There are different styles of managing conflict. You've got the non-confrontational. This is the person who backs off. They avoid it. They give in all the time. They are constantly in a lose-lose, win-lose situation, and they're always on the lose side. Okay? If you always give in, you're always going to lose a little bit of your choice. Confrontational is one person wants to control and win no matter what. There's a lot of aggressiveness there. Cooperative is when the conflict is viewed as a set of problems to be solved. It should be you and your partner versus the problem, not you versus your partner. People with confrontational styles tend to spend more time trying to find blame, trying to find the person who's at fault for this problem. And they will never accept their own responsibility. How do you manage your emotions in conflict? Well, you have to sit down and say, okay, we're not solving this problem right now. We're not getting there. So let's select a time, a place. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about our issue. Set a date and a time and a place. Plan what you're going to talk about in advance. Think about it in your head. You don't have to write it down or anything like that, but think about it. Think about it logically and rationally. And then when you do sit down, monitor the nonverbal messages. What are you actually sending? What are you receiving? Don't attack. Don't attack. Attacking is never going to solve the problem. And then use self-talk. Basically saying, okay, what is it that I want to say here? How do I say it? How am I coming across? You can do this. I know I can get this done. We're a good person. You can describe conflict-producing events. You can describe the situation. You say, okay, well, when we went to dinner the other night and I felt, use I language, I felt that you were very rude to the waitress. Can you tell me why you responded to the waitress that way? Use effective listening skills. Listen, hear what they have to say, and check understanding. Is that what you meant to do? Is that how you meant to come across? What was the situation going on here? Effective listening skills combined with questioning and using I language. I was a little bit confused when this happened. Don't use, say, disturbed, because that comes across as argumentative. So you can say, I was confused, all right? Or I was a little bit concerned. Concerned is a good word. And then during the course of this conflict resolution situation, you would identify everybody's goals. What do we need to have happen here? What do we need to fix? How are we, what is our final goal here? And identify where our goals overlap, okay? So the first thing you have to do, of course, when you're managing the problem is define the problem. Define the problem. Yeah, they may be screaming at you, but they may be screaming at you because they were upset at somebody at work or at school, and they felt comfortable enough with you that they could release that tension. Unfortunately, you're the innocent victim of their tension release. That could be a problem. Identify the solutions. Well, next time, walk in and, say, I'm in a bad mood because, and then discuss the pros and cons. You can work on those together in your, couple or whatever, your friendship, and you can discuss the pros and cons of trying to fix and manage this problem together. So that is basically chapter 8, and there's a lot to it, and I hope that you get a lot out of it. It would be interesting if you could figure out what type of conflict management skills you use, what type of conflict, how do you go into conflict? Are you cooperative, or are you confrontational, or are you non-confrontational? What type of arguments do you usually have with your significant others? I'm not making an assignment based on this. I could, but I'm not gonna. So I will get this put up as soon as possible. Have a good day. I will talk to you later. Bye. I have to figure out how to turn this off now.